Hello again. My name is Daniel, and today's story is one that stays with you long after you hear it. If you've come looking for clarity, you may not find it here, but you will find truth, and sometimes that's all we have to hold on to. This story was originally shared under a deleted account, but resurfaced with a new update. The poster now goes by Silent Winters 87 and titled their post, "I fell in love with the husband of the woman my husband is cheating on me with." It sounds messy, and it is, but life often is. My name is Meredith. I'm 37 years old, and I live in a quiet corner of Maine with my 6-year-old daughter, Emily. I've been married to Derek, who's now 39, for 10 years. Or rather, I've existed beside him for 10 years. Last winter, my world cracked open. A man named Caleb, 36, reached out to me. I didn't know him well, but I recognized his name from brief mentions. He was the husband of Tessa, Derek's coworker. Tessa was 31, bright-eyed, and always sweet when I'd visit Derek at his office. She used to braid my daughter's hair and bring her little snacks. I thought she was kind. Caleb said he didn't know who else to turn to. He found messages, graphic ones, between his wife and mine. He gave me dates, hotel receipts, screenshots of texts. I didn't want to believe it, but I knew Derek's tone, his style, his little phrases. They weren't meant for me anymore. Caleb didn't know what to do. I didn't either. We agreed to meet. I told him I'd been out of work since the pandemic. I'd been trying to rebuild, taking night classes and caring for Emily full-time. If I left now, I'd have no income, no home to offer my daughter. Derek would get custody. I couldn't bear that. I asked Caleb if we could sit on this a while, at least until I finished my program and found work. He said yes. He said he'd wait, though he wasn't sure what he'd do either. Tessa had 3 kids from a prior relationship, and he worried that if he confronted her, she'd cut him out of their lives. He wasn't their father, but he loved them like one. At first, we kept in touch out of necessity, sharing updates on Derek and Tessa. But soon the conversations drifted. We talked about our pasts, our regrets, our disappointments. He started calling more often, and I found myself waiting for the phone to ring. He made me laugh, even when I didn't want to. Eventually, we met for coffee, then walks, then movies. Always careful, always platonic. But I started waking up thinking of him, and going to sleep with his voice in my head. We talked about everything except the people who had hurt us. Caleb had a way of making me feel light, like I hadn't been carrying this secret for months, like I hadn't lost myself in the wreckage. Then 2 weeks ago, we had a picnic. It was chilly and gray. I remember the way the wind tugged at his sleeves. He looked at me, quietly, earnestly, and said, "I think I'm in love with you." I didn't know what to say. He told me he'd tried to explain his feelings away, that maybe we were just 2 broken people clinging to each other. But then he said he didn't feel broken anymore, that somehow knowing me had pulled him back together, that Tessa's betrayal, awful as it was, led him to me, and he couldn't be angry about that. I started to cry, because I felt it too. But I told him I was scared. What if we were just chasing a fantasy? What if these feelings disappeared once we broke free from our pasts? What if we were just 2 lonely people, too tired to be alone? He smiled gently. He said he didn't care if it was a mistake. He just wanted the chance to find out. And then he kissed my hand. I didn't kiss him back. Not because I didn't want to, but because I still wear a ring, and I still share a house with a man who doesn't love me, and maybe never did. Now I lie awake at night, wondering what kind of person I've become. I imagine Caleb meeting Emily. I imagine mornings where I wake beside someone who truly sees me. But I haven't left yet, and I don't know if I ever will. I think about waking up next to Caleb almost every morning, not in some overly romantic storybook way, just in the quiet sense of knowing someone is beside you and wants to be. I imagine him reaching for my hand, asking me how I slept. I imagine Emily's sleepy footsteps padding into the room and him smiling at her like he always does. But that life still feels 100 miles away. I have 1 semester left before I graduate. After that, I'll have real options. I've already gotten a few job offers, some full-time, others remote. Nothing certain, but enough to make me feel like the ground beneath me isn't entirely gone. I've thanked Caleb more times than I can count, for waiting, for being patient, for not pushing. He tells me he doesn't mind, that he wants me to finish what I started, get my life in order, and make sure I'm standing on my own 2 feet before we detonate what's left of our marriages. He said once, with that crooked little smile of his, "All I want is a real kiss when it's over." And I promised him one. I promised, even if it broke me. My goal hasn't changed. I want to land a stable job, move out, and file for divorce, quietly, with as little mess as possible for Emily's sake. I wonder all the time if I'm pathetic for still hoping that Caleb and I could have something after all of this. That maybe, somehow, 2 people who were shattered by betrayal could find some version of happiness again. Sometimes I read the comments from people who've read my story. One person wrote, "Go for it. I'd love to see their faces when they find out you 2 are together." And while it used to comfort me to imagine that moment, how satisfying it might be, I don't feel that way anymore. The truth is, I don't care what Derek and Tessa do. I stopped caring the day I realized the affair didn't hurt me because I still loved Derek. It hurt me because I thought I mattered more. But I've moved past the need for revenge. I just want peace. I want to build a life for my daughter that's steady and safe, even if I have to do it in pieces. Caleb is a light in my life, but Emily is my sun. She's the reason I get up every morning, the reason I haven't fallen apart completely. Another reader told me, "You're not pathetic. Something beautiful came from something awful. That doesn't make it wrong, it just makes it complicated." And they're right. Caleb and I are complicated. And real. But we haven't seen each other since that day he told me he loved me. It felt too close to a line we couldn't afford to cross. We still talk, text, call, but carefully, softly, like we're afraid to wake up from something too fragile to last. I told him I needed space. Not because I stopped feeling, but because I didn't want what we had to be born out of secrecy. I didn't want to feel like I was doing the same thing to Derek that he had done to me. Someone else suggested therapy, for me, for Caleb, and even for Emily. They said we can't walk into something new carrying the weight of what nearly broke us. That healing needs time. That trust needs effort. That love, even when it's real, needs clarity to survive. I've started looking for a therapist. I've also told Caleb that once December comes and I'm done with this semester, I'll start living off savings if I need to, just to make the transition easier. It's strange, though. Derek has suddenly become attentive again. Tessa's been quiet, too. No texts, no late nights at work. It's like whatever they had is crumbling, and now Derek notices I exist again. He compliments me, tries to initiate conversations, touches my arm when he passes me in the kitchen. I hate it. I haven't slept with him since I found out about Tessa, not once. As long as he was getting what he wanted from someone else, he didn't care. But now that it's gone, I'm back on his radar. And I don't know how to make him stop. Someone commented on my last post and said, "You have every right to see this through. You waited. You thought. You didn't rush. You deserve to find out what's on the other side." I want to believe that. I need to believe that. But belief is hard when you're carrying this much pain in your chest. Someone once commented on my story and said they didn't think what Caleb and I were feeling was impulsive or foolish, that we'd earned the right to see where this could lead, not by rushing into it, but by enduring the quiet, painful parts first. They said if it were them, they wouldn't move in together right away either. Too many wounds still healing, too much debris left behind. The death of a marriage, even a rotten one, still leaves a mess. And when kids are involved, the heartbreak multiplies. They were right. We're still standing in the ashes of two lives that ended before we were ready to admit it. I'm still in school, still trying to finish something that feels like the last lifeline I'm holding on to. I'm trying to follow the plan. Graduate, get a job, move out, file the paperwork. Everything else will unfold in its own time. At least, that's what I keep telling myself. But the waiting gets heavy. This isn't really an update. Nothing dramatic has changed. But I've been feeling so low lately, untethered and restless. Maybe writing again will help me understand where all these emotions are coming from. Or maybe I just need to feel less alone in this. It's the holidays soon, and everything's closing in. My last semester starts in mid-January, so I'll have a small break. I have 2 job opportunities lined up. One is an unpaid internship that would let me work remotely most days, which sounds perfect for parenting and school. The other pays more, but it's in office, and I'd have to give up flexibility. With custody still undecided, I think the first job might be the better option, even if it stretches me thin. I'm writing now because I saw Caleb yesterday. You might remember, after we confessed our feelings, we decided to stop seeing each other. Not forever, but enough to let our lives settle. We've done well sticking to that, only meeting once in the months since. But we still talk. Texts, phone calls, sometimes even video chats. It's become a quiet routine, comforting, necessary. Yesterday, though, he asked to see me. I met him at the park, our park. It was cold, overcast, and the wind was biting, but he was already there when I arrived, holding coffee, a slice of lemon cake, and a small bouquet of winter flowers. I smiled when I saw the cake. He knows I love it. He said we were celebrating. A year ago that day, we first met. Not met in the literal sense, we'd crossed paths at work parties before, but truly met, as 2 broken people trying to make sense of something unforgivable. It was raining that day too, but not like this. That rain had been heavier, the sky darker, my heart almost unrecognizable in its pain. We sat and talked for hours, about everything, how far we've come, how different we feel now, how, despite all the grief and guilt, we've started to find parts of ourselves again. Caleb told me he loved me, and it took everything I had not to break down and throw myself into his arms. But I didn't. I went home instead. And that's when everything inside me began to unravel. Derek had picked up Emily from school. They were sitting at the kitchen table when I walked in, laughing, playing with food, teasing each other. She was so happy, her little face glowing, her cheeks flushed from the cold. And all I could feel was this overwhelming wave of sadness and shame crashing over me. What are we doing? What am I doing? I wanted to scream. I wanted to run. I wanted to disappear. Derek hasn't contacted Tessa in weeks, at least not that I know of. Maybe the affair fizzled. Maybe they've grown more careful. They still work together, after all. But lately, he's been more present at home, more gentle. He tells me he loves me again, that he misses me, that I look beautiful. But I can't bear to hear it. Every time he touches me, I flinch inside. Every word feels poisoned. I haven't been intimate with him since I found out, and I never will be again. That bridge burned when he kissed someone else while I was home singing lullabies to our daughter. Now, even sitting beside him makes my skin crawl. And worst of all, sometimes I feel like I'm the one cheating. Not physically, but emotionally. Because while Derek is suddenly trying, I'm already gone. My heart is somewhere else, with someone else, and I don't know how to fix that, or if I even want to. There's something unbearable about being touched by someone you no longer recognize. Derek's affection, once something warm and grounding, now feels like acid on my skin. And the shame that blooms inside me for feeling that way, it's suffocating. I lie in bed at night beside him, and I try to summon even a fragment of what I once loved. But it's gone. All I see when I close my eyes are the words he sent to her, messages full of lust and laughter and intimacy he never gave to me anymore. The things he wrote to her, the things he once whispered to me when we were young and still believed in forever, are now stained. I try so hard to remember the good, the first years, the hope, the promises. But every memory is clouded now. And when I reach deeper, trying to find something worth salvaging, all I see is Caleb's face. That makes me feel even worse. I hate Derek for what he did, but I also hate myself for letting my heart drift, for letting it find someone else while I'm still legally tied to this broken house. Have I just given up too easily? Am I the coward who ran while the walls were still standing? Emily, she's the one who matters most. She didn't ask for this. She didn't choose this home or these parents or this sadness wrapped in silence. She just wants pancakes and bedtime stories and two people who love her and smile at each other like they mean it. And now she's going to watch it all fall apart because her dad was unfaithful and her mom was too heartbroken to fight. Last night, I broke. I wrote Caleb a long, messy message. I told him everything I couldn't say out loud, that I felt like a ghost in my own life, that guilt follows me like a shadow, that I don't know who I am anymore or how to keep walking forward with all this grief strapped to my chest. He called me afterward, but I couldn't answer. My throat was too tight, my hands shaking. Instead, I told Derek I'd be sleeping in Emily's room again. It's not the first time. I've found comfort in curling up beside her, watching her peaceful face while she dreams. That innocence, untouched, untainted, breaks me in ways Derek's betrayal never could. This morning, Caleb called again. I answered this time. His voice was softer than usual, like he was afraid of saying the wrong thing. He told me he understood, that he respected the space I needed, but he also reminded me of something I'd forgotten, something he's repeated more than once since all this began. He said, "Even at your lowest, Meredith, you knew what you wanted. You stayed not out of weakness, but out of strength, for your daughter, for your future. You're too close to let this pain drag you under now." He told me he loved me, said he would wait, and I cried for nearly an hour after we hung up, not because I doubted him, but because I missed him more than I should have been allowed to. I know this marriage is over. The paperwork hasn't been signed, but the end came long before now. Still, there's this deep, clawing guilt that won't let me breathe. It flares up at night, in the quiet. But I have to do this alone now. Not because I don't love Caleb, but because I want to be able to look back and say, I didn't run from one man into the arms of another. I walked away because I had to. The guilt might never vanish completely, but at least it won't have Caleb's face attached to it anymore. And then, just when I thought things couldn't twist deeper, Caleb reached out again. Not with romance, but with sadness. His mother is sick, very sick. She lives almost 8 hours away, and he left to visit her this week. He wasn't supposed to contact me. We had agreed to take space, but he sent a short message to let me know, just in case. I knew immediately something was wrong. So I drove there. I told myself it was just to offer comfort, but it was more than that. I needed to see him, even if just for an hour. He looked exhausted, pale, broken in a way I hadn't seen before. His mother, only 58, is declining quickly. I stayed as long as I could before I had to return home, but my heart broke all over again as I left him standing in that sterile hallway, looking smaller than I ever thought possible. A day later, Caleb returned home and ended his marriage. He didn't scream or accuse. He didn't tell her he knew everything. He just told her he wasn't happy and hadn't been for a long time. And then he walked away, just like that. And somehow that hurt too, because endings never feel clean, even when they're necessary. Caleb didn't tell her about the affair when he left. He didn't shout or accuse. He didn't demand answers or closure. He simply told Tessa that he wasn't happy anymore, and that he didn't want to stay in a marriage where his heart no longer lived. Later that night, he texted me. He thanked me for visiting him and his mother, and then he told me he'd filed the divorce papers. Quiet, final, like he was shedding the last layer of something that had weighed him down for years. He said he was moving back to his hometown to care for his mother. She needs help now, more than ever, and her illness is progressing fast. Caleb left the city yesterday, but he'll return once more to collect the rest of his things. I knew this was coming, but the moment he left, something shifted in me. The air felt heavier, the days a little grayer. Even if we weren't seeing each other anymore, his absence made this place feel hollow. Since then, I've noticed Derek on his phone more, constantly checking it, his eyes scanning the screen like he's waiting for something. Especially yesterday, it was almost obsessive. A part of me wonders if Tessa told him about her marriage ending, if they're talking again, if the affair is waking back up. I try not to think about it, but it lingers. Someone asked me online if I was prepared, really prepared, for the possibility that Caleb might leave me too, that maybe he'd go back to Tessa, that maybe I was just another stop on someone else's broken road. And what if he did? If Caleb walked away now, I could move in with family, but that wouldn't be enough to keep custody of Emily. Not yet. I'd need a job, a stable place, proof that I can support her on my own. Until then, the court would likely favor Derek. The thought of losing her, of watching her disappear behind a judge's decision, chokes me with fear. I've been working toward leaving Derek for a year. I finally told him recently that I knew everything, that the facade we'd been clinging to was dead. Also, I'm sorry for disappearing online. I deleted my account not long ago. I wasn't ready for the weight of judgment that came flooding in. People telling me I was a terrible mother, that I was weak, that I should have walked away the second I learned the truth. I understand now that when you put your story out there, you invite both support and cruelty, that the internet doesn't owe you kindness. I've figured out how to turn off direct messages, so if someone still wants to insult me, they'll have to do it in the comments, in the open. For anyone just finding this, I'm still finishing my degree. I have a job secured for April. The salary isn't amazing, but it's enough, and it increases by 30% once I graduate. That will help. I've signed a lease on a small apartment just a few blocks from Emily's school. When I got the approval, I broke down crying. The place isn't perfect, but they accepted my poor credit and gave me a chance. I had to pay 3 months' rent in advance, but I get the keys on April 1st. I haven't hired a lawyer yet. I'm waiting until things are more immediate because I can't afford to waste money. But I did find a nonprofit organization for women dealing with separation and custody. They've been helpful. Even though my marriage isn't abusive, their experience with complex divorces and family law is comforting. Ever since I discovered the affair, my physical relationship with Derek ended. In the beginning, he didn't seem to care. He had someone else, someone exciting. But over time, especially in the last year, he started to notice the silence between us. Lately, he's been trying, touching my arm in the kitchen, asking questions, looking for me in a way that makes my skin crawl. I avoid him, always. I make excuses, that I'm tired, that I'm busy, that my drive is gone. He doesn't push, not exactly, but I feel the tension growing, his confusion, his resentment, like he's trying to pull something from me that's already long gone. Last week, he wanted to talk about it seriously, about us. I told him I was busy, again, and I meant it. But even I know that excuse won't hold forever. I told Derek my sex drive was low, that I was exhausted, that I didn't have the energy for anything more than the bare minimum. And while it wasn't a lie, it wasn't the whole truth either. He said it wasn't about the sex. It was about the silence, about how I flinch when he walks too close, how I barely speak unless it's about Emily or logistics, how I've stopped looking him in the eyes, how the warmth between us has been replaced with frost. He wasn't wrong. I asked him if we could just hold off until after the holidays. Emily's still so excited about Christmas, writing her list, drawing snowflakes, hanging paper ornaments in her room. I didn't want this house filled with shouting and slammed doors while she waited for Santa. I just wanted to give her one last Christmas where her parents lived under the same roof. That's when he said something that cracked through me like ice. He said, "You know what happens in a marriage when one person gets neglected? You start looking somewhere else." I froze. And then I told him the truth. I said he didn't have to look elsewhere. He already had. He'd been with Tessa long before I ever pulled away. I wasn't withholding. I was grieving. At first, he didn't believe me. He blinked, stammered, asked if he'd heard me right. Then the denials started. Then the excuses. Then the apologies. He begged for details. He wanted to know how I found out, how long I'd known, what I'd planned to do. I told him I already had a job lined up. I had signed a lease. I was leaving. Not today, not tomorrow, but soon. That's when he really fell apart. He's been trying to talk to me every day since, asking why I didn't tell him, why I didn't yell or scream or give him a chance to fix it. He kept saying she didn't mean anything, that it was just physical, that he loved me, had always loved me, and he regretted everything. That he ended it months ago, that he's been trying to show me he's sorry. He keeps bringing up Emily, saying we should have gone to therapy, that I should have confronted him so we could have healed, that he'd have dropped everything for me. But I mourned us a year ago. While he was wrapped around another woman, I was dying in silence. I cried myself to sleep. I withered inside. And when I finally stopped waiting for him to come back, I started preparing to stand on my own. He thinks this is sudden, but I've been living in the aftermath for months. I told him about the job, the apartment, the timeline. I asked him to please think of Emily and not let his anger become her burden. He was furious, said if I had really thought of our daughter, I would have confronted him the moment I found out, that we could have rebuilt, that I was the one who lied, who plotted, who pretended everything was fine while secretly planning to leave him behind. Was I pretending? I don't know anymore. I started crying. I begged him not to take it out on our daughter. I told him I did all this for her, that I didn't want her to see the yelling, that I needed to know I could care for her before I tore our home apart. He's cold now, barely looks at me, but he's still gentle with Emily, and for that, I'm grateful. Most nights I sleep in her room. It's where I feel safest. I didn't want it to end like this, not with shouting and desperation, but I guess there's never a right way to leave. You can plan for months and still find yourself unprepared when it all collapses. I don't regret telling him. Maybe it was time. I'm trying to keep the communication civil, for Emily's sake. Derek's hurt. He feels betrayed. I understand that. But I need him to rise above the pain and focus on the one person who didn't ask for any of this. Caleb's divorce is still ongoing. He's back in his hometown now, caring for his mother. Her condition has worsened, and both of his sisters have flown in from Australia to be with her. At least, he's not alone. I've visited 3 times since she fell ill, but it's a long drive, and I can't stay long. We talk every morning. His voice calms me, but there's a sadness in it now that wasn't there before. No, I haven't told Derek about Caleb, and I don't plan to. If Caleb and I end up together, people will know. But we made a promise, back when we were still dreaming, that we'd never tell our exes how we met. That part is ours alone, and we're keeping it. Whatever comes next, that part of our story stays hidden. Caleb lives about 8 hours away now, back in the small New Hampshire town where he grew up. We haven't talked much about us in a long time. There's been too much going on, his mother's health declining, my life slowly coming apart and being stitched back together. For now, all I care about is that his mother finds some peace, healing, if that's still possible, or at the very least, comfort in the time she has left. About 10 months have passed since I last shared anything. I didn't think I would again, but tonight I felt the need to let it out. Hi again. I don't know who's still reading, or if anyone even remembers. A year ago, I was here, telling my story. 2 years ago, I found out that my husband was having an affair with one of his employees, a woman who, ironically, was married at the time too. I deleted the original post not long after. I couldn't handle the judgment, the confusion, the vulnerability. But I found it again recently, gathered and archived online. A time capsule of the woman I was. I've had the hardest year of my life. Even though not everything was awful, even though there were slivers of light, it still feels like I barely survived it. There are things I'm grateful for. I have a job now, a good one, the kind of job that feels stable, supportive, human. My coworkers have been kind in ways I never expected, and I have my own apartment now. It's small, but it's mine. It's near Emily's school. I can walk her there in the mornings when I have her, and that simple act feels like a gift. But beyond that, everything else has been hard. People talk about how long you've known someone, how much you've loved them, how deeply you've trusted them. But none of that matters when you hit the bottom. That's when you learn who they really are. And with Derek, what I've learned has broken me. He still refuses to sign the divorce papers. Legally, we're still married. Emotionally, we're strangers. And yet he finds ways, every day, to hurt me, to twist the knife deeper. Sometimes it's subtle, other times it's ruthless. And occasionally, it spills over to Emily. When I told him my plans to leave him, he laughed at first. Denial, dismissal. That was bad enough. But when he realized I was serious, he turned cruel. He threatened to take full custody of Emily. Then he emptied our shared accounts, took every asset we had, and filed motions in court claiming I was mentally unstable, unfit to care for our daughter. I have been diagnosed with PTSD and depression, 2 things I've never hidden, and which I've sought help for. But to him, they were weapons. Because of bureaucratic delays, I didn't see Emily for 8 weeks. 8 weeks without her laugh. 8 weeks without her hand in mine. I nearly broke. I almost gave up. At my lowest, I even considered going back, just to have my daughter back. Eventually, I was awarded shared custody, but by then, the damage had started to settle. Emily was angry, quietly broken. She told me she hated me, that she wanted to stay with Daddy. He had poisoned her against me, and I knew it, but it still tore me apart. Even now, the cycle continues. When she returns from Derek's home, she's distant,
cold. It takes days to win her back, to remind her who I am. And just when she starts to laugh again, it's time for her to go back, and it all resets. He's done everything to avoid honoring our prenup. I haven't fought him on it. I've been willing to start over with nothing if it meant he wouldn't lash out at our daughter in retaliation. At one point, he told me if I left him everything, every asset, every right, he would give me full custody. I believed him. I thought maybe he was putting her first. But then he changed his mind and filed a new motion, again seeking full custody. It was a game to him, all of it. The manipulation, the delays, the power plays. At some point this past summer, I broke. I wrote him a letter, pages long. I reminded him of the promise he made the night Emily was born, that he would always protect her, that he would never let anyone hurt her. I told him that I was just a woman, replaceable. He had replaced me once already. But Emily, she was his daughter. She was sacred. I begged him, pleaded with him, not to use her to punish someone who no longer mattered to him. I don't know if he read it, but I needed him to hear me, to remember who we used to be, and more importantly, to remember who she still is. I told Derek not to use our daughter as a weapon, not to turn her into something sharp to throw at someone he'd already decided was disposable. I begged him not to turn her into collateral damage. I said, "You already replaced me once, you could do it again. But she's your daughter. She's irreplaceable." He never responded to that letter. But after that, something shifted. He stopped texting or calling unless it was about Emily. He no longer found excuses to provoke me or use the court system to drag me into more pain. And Emily? She's been lighter too. She tells me she loves me. And she tells me she loves Daddy too. I don't know if it was the letter or something else entirely, but he's let go of the part of him that wanted to punish me. One evening, when he dropped Emily off, he stood on the porch for a long moment and apologized. For everything. For the affair, for the threats, for making everything harder than it had to be. He said he still loved us, whatever "us" now meant, and he promised he wouldn't hurt us anymore. So far, he's kept that promise. He's still seeing that on-again, off-again girlfriend. She's younger, 25 maybe. And when she's around, I see Emily more, even on Derek's weeks. It's like the presence of someone else calms the chaos, stabilizes him. And I find myself, strangely, hoping they stay together. Not out of pettiness, but because it gives my daughter a steadier routine and more time with me. I still don't know what the future holds. I'm scared of how this will shape Emily, of what she'll remember and what she'll forget. Most of the time, I regret asking for a divorce when she was so young. Maybe I should have waited until she was old enough to understand, to separate what happened between her parents from the love they had for her. But some days, it feels like I made the right call, and other days, I'm not sure at all. Caleb still lives in his hometown. His mother is dying now. No treatments are working, not chemo, not clinical trials, not anything. I've visited as often as I can, but it's hard. He's hours away, and Emily needs stability. Every time I visit, I feel guilty leaving again. Guilty that I can't stay longer. Guilty that I'm not giving more when he's given me so much. But Caleb says he's just glad I'm still there, that hearing my voice is enough, that knowing I care is enough. We talk every day, small things mostly, weather, his mother, work, Emily. But sometimes the sadness in his voice is so heavy, I feel like I can barely breathe through the phone. Last month, when Derek took Emily on a trip with his family, Caleb came to see me. He showed up at my door with an overnight bag and a hotel reservation he never used. He spent the weekend with me at my apartment. It was the first time I let myself be with him. It felt like a dam broke inside me. Everything I'd held back for years spilled out at once. And he was everything I thought he would be. Everything I needed. Everything I was afraid I didn't deserve. He held me and told me he loved me. And I cried so hard I thought I might fall apart in his arms. I didn't know it was possible to love someone like that, to hold so much joy and sorrow in one moment. Caleb's divorce is finalized. Mine is still tangled in paperwork and delays. We've decided not to make anything public between us yet, not until everything on my end is stable. We've waited 2 years. What's a few more months? For the first time in a long time, I feel hope. Not just for me, for Caleb, for Emily, even for Derek. I want us all to find peace, whatever that looks like. Someone once told me I was a role model for walking away, for not compromising myself, for protecting my daughter. I didn't know what to say. I still don't feel like one. Maybe I will someday. Another person warned me about parental alienation, that Derek could be damaging Emily in ways I couldn't prove. And they were right. But we're not in the U.S. Our legal system is different, slower, harder to navigate. I've tried every path I can, but there's only so much I can document, only so much I can prove. As for the assets, he still has everything. And no, I haven't fought him on it. The lawyers are still working on a settlement. But at this point, I don't care. If keeping my distance means keeping him calm, then that's the price I'll pay. It was never about money anyway. It was about survival, about protecting Emily, and about saving the last scraps of myself. Right now, I have a job. I have my apartment. I have a daughter who, slowly, is learning to trust me again. That's more than enough. Sometimes I wonder if Derek still believes there's a future for us. When he says things like, "I love you both and I won't hurt you again," it doesn't sound like closure. It sounds like a door left cracked open, just enough for doubt to slip through. It worries me. Because if I do end up building a life with Caleb, if we ever make our quiet relationship public, how will Derek react? Will he slip back into the same manipulative patterns, using Emily as a pawn to get back at me? He's done it before. And no matter how sincere his apology was, I can't ignore the fact that he was once willing to weaponize his own child. Maybe I'm overthinking. Maybe things really have changed. But it's hard to trust a man who only became remorseful when he lost control. I want to believe he'll stay on the path he's on now, calmer, more focused on Emily, less reactive. I want to believe that peace is possible between us, even if love is long gone. But some days it feels like I'm holding my breath, waiting for the other shoe to drop. Still, I hope. I hope the apartment I found becomes a safe space. I hope this job becomes my anchor. I hope Emily continues to trust me a little more each week. And I hope, more than anything, that the love I found with Caleb can exist out in the open one day, without fear. Meredith's story echoes the quiet anguish so many people endure behind closed doors, caught between the need for peace and the fear of triggering old wounds. In real life, leaving a toxic relationship is never as clean as signing papers or changing addresses. Emotional entanglement, especially when children are involved, can linger long after physical separation. If you find yourself in a similar situation, take note of warning signs early: shifting blame, emotional manipulation, using your children as leverage, or sudden performances of love after months or years of neglect. These are not signs of change, they are signs of control trying to reassert itself. Build your foundation before you leave. That means having your finances, housing, and emotional support network in place. Most importantly, seek legal guidance and therapy. Protect your child from being caught in the crossfire. Shield them from the resentment, not the truth. It's okay to want love again, but let that love meet you in a place of peace, not in the rubble of survival. You are not selfish for choosing safety. You are not weak for needing time. And you are not broken for wanting something better.